Today, the Supreme Court is hearing a case regarding abortion that very well may fundamentally change the abortion laws that are allowed in the United States. It might even overturn Roe V Wade, which is something that I would certainly be in favor of. Maybe you are too, but let's find out what's going on. So this is a case that comes from Mississippi, because in 2018, Mississippi passed an abortion ban that would ban abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, with what I think are fairly large exceptions. So it's not even the most strict ban that we've seen in recent years. It was blocked by lower federal courts, and so they've been pushing it up the ladder until now it's at the Supreme Court. Now, the reason this could spell doom for Roe v. Wade is actually fairly simple. Because in Roe v. Wade, and 20 years later in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, they argued that abortion was constitutionally protected, and that you couldn't have a, quote, undue burden on a woman trying to access an abortion. That has generally meant that banning abortions before the point of viability, somewhere around 20 to 24 weeks, was not allowed and states couldn't do it. 15 weeks is obviously before 20 weeks. So the argument here goes that if the Supreme Court allows this abortion ban to stand, if they actually allow it to be implemented, then the standard that has been used with Roe v. Wade would no longer apply. I do want to point out, I think undue burden, for one, is very subjective. What exactly constitutes an undue burden is not specific. But also, I don't think 15 weeks is an undue burden, especially when you point out, as the CDC does, that they estimate 95% of abortions take place by the 15-week mark. So can you really argue that a 15-week ban is an undue burden when it would only affect at most 5% of women trying to get an abortion in the first place? Now, as this article points out, the Supreme Court is currently with a conservative majority. It's the most conservative it's been in quite some time. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pass it and they're going to reverse Roe v. Wade, because there are some conservative judges on the court who may not rule in that way. But it does mean that things are looking pretty hopeful. If you are someone who is against abortion, if you're pro-life like I am, then this is probably the closest we've ever been to overturning Roe v. Wade. In response, though, there are obviously people who are upset. I don't want to go into this too much, but I do want to highlight Nancy Pelosi's comments. And that's because I think they're just very indicative of where she's coming from and that she doesn't know what she's talking about. So, I actually didn't mention this, but the name of the court case is Dobbs V Jackson Women's Health Organization. So this is a statement that Nancy Pelosi put out today, December 1st, talking about the Supreme Court case. She says, for one, that Mississippi's radical abortion ban is brazenly unconstitutional and designed to destroy Roe v. Wade. First, let me reiterate, a 15-week ban is not radical. It would apply to at most 5% of women trying to get an abortion. How exactly is that a radical abortion ban? It's not like this is even one of the so-called heartbeat bills that tries to ban it at 6 weeks. 15 weeks is quite a lot later than 6 weeks. So can we just rein in the rhetoric just a little bit so we know that you're not just doing this for political gain, which obviously she is, but let's just keep going. Republicans are trying to control women's most personal decision, blah, blah, blah. This is the part I want to highlight. She says, the constitutional right to an abortion has been repeatedly affirmed, and any failure to fully strike down the Mississippi ban would seriously erode the legitimacy of the court. So what she is saying here is that this is a decided case. That Roe v. Wade, even though it happened, 50 years ago, we can't change it. Planned Parenthood v. Casey, which also happened 30 years ago, we can't change that. Because of all of this, if the court makes a decision that she doesn't like, it will erode the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. And that's kind of ridiculous. Just because something has been decided in the past does not mean it has to stay that way forever. And thank goodness for that, because they've made horrible decisions in the past. When you think about how they reacted to slavery and everything like that. Just because the Supreme Court has made a decision in the past doesn't mean it can't be reevaluated and overturned. It's been several decades since Roe v. Wade, so let's reevaluate and see what happens.